have a renewables policy for another 18 months.
Well, with us in the studio now, John Sauven of Greenpeace and Malcom Wicks. Are you still Energy Minister?
I am.
Energy Minister, good. Excellent. Now, I suppose you're pretty chuffed by what Gordon Brown had to say.
Well, on one hand, yes. I mean, it was a bit like pulling teeth to actually get him to reveal the details of what this meant. But he did eventually say to questions that it would mean about 40% of our electricity coming from renewable sources by 2020. Now,
do you believe any of it?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? Because, I mean, the thing is that we've had lots of targets, and I think following on from this thing about saying we're going to get 40% of our electricity from renewable sources, he then talked about lots of consultations, debates, forums, more discussions, public consultations, and I think the problem is that what you really want to see from the government now, if they're serious about this, is pressing the green button for go, and also being very clear that they're not going to do things like build new coal-fired power stations.
That's the very hard thing to understand. If this matter is so urgent, 10 years after you guys came into government, why is it going to be another 18 months before we get a target for renewables?
Well, we're making progress on renewables all the time, but, you know, we've seen that the European Union has signed up to 20% by 2020.
So, when you say we're making progress, we're currently at what?
Just under 2%. Renewable energy.
Yes, but
that's progress,
well,
is it?
I mean, we're at the very bottom of the EU.
Yes, we are.
Renewable energy
our position is a poor one, and that's because since the 60s we've been reliant on oil and gas from the North Sea. But no, Jeremy, every year now we're making progress on renewables.
The point is, you've been 10 years in government. Gordon Brown says this is urgent, and we're talking about the future of the planet.
Yes, and that's and the things that we've put in train mean that every year now we're improving. We've announced the Thames Array, the largest offshore wind project in the world, but none of us are complacent. We now need to do a lot more, and we've got to get on with the task.
It wasn't complacent, it was just incompetence.
I can't have Greenpeace saying to us, let's not waste our time consulting, because when on nuclear they said we didn't consult properly. They took us to court. Yes, so we need to do things properly and be consistent about it.
But Malcolm, if you take Germany, they have 10 times more wind than we have, 20 times more biomass, 300 times more solar. All of this has happened in the last 6 or 7 years, and that's because they have a proper regulatory mechanism, the feed-in tariff, which gives long-term guarantees, stable guarantees on renewable pricing that we don't have.
I'm willing to look at anything, by the way.
I know, but
I'm willing to look at
this. They have a fantastic manufacturing base, but 250,000 jobs compared to our 25,000.
No, it's impressive, and I want to look at that.
But
look, can I say that look, I've just mentioned the Thames Array. We've said that we're going to look very seriously at the Severn barrage.
Yeah. I'm looking again.
No, Jeremy, I didn't look last week. I announced consent for a major offshore wind farm in the Irish Sea that will provide electricity. Don't look so sceptical. It will provide electricity for 360,000 homes.
That's not talking. Heathrow fits into the strategy.
No, but I'm trying to answer the first question. We're not just talking. We're doing. We're doing a lot of wind farms.
How does a third runway at Heathrow, which was what equivalent roughly? Well, you would know the figures. Were equivalent to the CO2 produced by Kenya or something?
Yes, about the annual emissions of Kenya.
Well, look, I was asked a question. Let me answer it. You know, let's get a dialogue going. You know, we cannot say to people, thou shalt not fly. I don't want to return to a situation where the only people that fly are the rich. We have said that aviation should come into the emissions trading scheme.
But you see, you're expanding
so a proper price can be put on the carbon.
But Malcolm, the key thing is, if you take a third runway at Heathrow, I mean, we just saw a new railway station opening at St Pancras, trains to Paris and Brussels. We have 60 flights a day going to Paris. We have 100 flights a year, 100,000 flights a year going on domestic and short-haul flights up to Manchester, everywhere else, which are easily reachable by train.
Look, it is a problem. I think most of us would admit.
Need a third runway.
I think most of us admit that aviation is the most difficult nut to crack.
Well, it's not difficult nut to crack. Just say no third runway.
Because, Jeremy, people like you demand to fly, and because as a major business centre, you cannot suddenly say this method of transport is a...
But why not switch all those flights to trains? Then you don't need the
because there are some places you can't get to by train because there are seas in the middle of the way. But look, I think there've been 15 projects for airport expansion in the last few years. The government's only agreed to 4 of them.
But you see, you do understand how it looks, don't you? We have Gordon Brown making these pious noises, and then you have to go ahead and
Well, I mean, they're not pious noises. There's been a lot of hard
airports.
thinking going on in government about how we contribute to the 2020 target, and we're going to produce zero carbon housing by 2016, a revolution in terms of how we build houses. We're going to look very seriously at the Severn barrage.
No more coal-fired power stations.
We're going to lead the world in carbon capture and storage.
Oh, sorry, we've just heard Alistair Darling saying earlier this year that was unproven technology.
No, that was bad editing. He didn't say that. He said it hasn't been proven yet. We want to prove it, which is no, Jeremy. It's why we're the first country in the world to have a major demonstration project on carbon capture and storage.
Malcolm, will you say no to new coal? Will you say no to new coal that does not have carbon capture and storage?
Well, I think we need to move in that direction, but we need to
say no to Kingsnorth, which is going to be on your desk this week.
We need to test
the first new coal-fired power station
the technology.
Yes,
this is a brave new technology.
But are you going to say no to new coal-fired power stations that do not have carbon capture and storage?
We won't say no to that, but we're saying the long term we want them to have carbon capture and storage.
If you don't say
because
no to that, it doesn't make sense.
At the moment,
you're never going to meet your CO2 emission
At the moment,
target.
I have to say to Greenpeace, we will not be able to give people the electricity and the power they need simply by some energy efficiency and more windmills. I'm afraid we need a diverse energy mix.
Just said 40% of our electricity is going to come from 2020. That's more than enough to keep all the lights on.
We'll see a massive expansion of offshore wind farms, onshore wind, marine technology.
We'll leave it there.
We're moving in the direction. I think people should cheer up about it.
Thank you very much. And by the way, there was no editing of that clip. Now, coming up on the programme, Dreams of Democracy on the streets of
monks have to
Burma.
stay in prison? How many more monks have to die for this?
Dreams of Democracy on the streets of Burma. Before that, though, a roundup of today's news. Our main story tonight, the Chancellor